Cat. The first monoplane single-engine fighter to enter service in the RAF. First flight in 1945. And of course, they're still kind of getting production of the Spitfires underway in 1940, which is why there were more Hurricanes than there were Spitfires during the Battle of Britain.
Tracy, you like it, isn't it?
Very rugged plane, a bit like that Wildcat.
Now get your cameras and video cameras ready. In from the left we have our Hurricane pair, Trevor Dugan and Gabriel Barton. I've not managed to fly a Hurricane myself, but when I spoke to Trevor this morning, he talked about that high-speed entry for that loop. He said we need to get it going as fast as we can to enable us to have the performance.
Tailplane is pretty much the same, and actually the cowling is much the same as well. It's just it's got a closed cockpit, and it's a monoplane. And it's got a bigger engine. But what that does mean, of course, is that when you're trying to suddenly increase production dramatically, a lot of the machine tools and the know-how are already in place. And it's actually creating the machine tools is half the thing. That's one of the things that's most expensive in a new aircraft production. The Spitfire, by contrast, is completely new. Everything about it is new. It's completely unique to the Spitfire. Whereas it is also easier to quickly produce in numbers. And they more than performed a job in 1940, and frankly the country owes a debt to the Hurricane out of all proportion to its brilliance as a fighter aircraft, and all those that flew it, of course.
Well, one of the stark differences between the Hurricane and the Spitfire is the thickness of the wing. If you look at the front of a Hurricane, the thickness of the profile of the wing it's much thicker on a Hurricane and clearly much thinner on a Spitfire. And one of the challenges they had with the Spitfire was trying to fit all of the armament and, of course, the undercarriage, the retractable undercarriage, into the wing. So that was one of the challenges they faced. But some brilliant design, and they obviously achieved it.
Well, yeah, thank goodness. And you know, that famous elliptical wing would never have been designed if the requirement had been to have cannons which are much bigger and chunkier than machine guns. Both the Hurricane and the Spitfire are equipped with 8 Browning .303 machine guns. And they could store enough ammunition to fire for 14.7 seconds continually, which I'm sure you'll agree is not very much. Whereas the Messerschmitt 109 had 55 seconds worth of machine gun ammunition, which obviously gave it a little bit of an advantage. So ME 109E, I should say, the MEL. What that also means is the 8 Brownings on the Hurricane could be much closer together because of the thickness of that wing, whereas in the Spitfire they have to be spread out. And the Hurricanes are in their early war livery with the green and the brown, which switched over to grey and green in 1941. So certainly over European skies at any rate. So that's the kind of 1939, 1940 look. A bit like new football kit at each season. By 1941 they'd moved on. And actually in 1940 they got rid of the split black and white underside as well.
What was the purpose of that, James?
Just recognition from the ground. So that's kind of really why. I don't think you could argue that the Hurricane was better than the Spitfire Mark I in 1940. It just wasn't. But it was still a very, very good fighter plane, certainly for 1940. And more than a match for the Luftwaffe's bombers, more than a match for the Me-110, the twin-engine Luftwaffe fighter plane in a fighter role. Obviously the 110 was used as a night fighter and as a bomber and a ground attack aircraft and many other roles, but as a fighter on fighter, you'd want to be in a Hurricane rather than a 110. And as I say, it could take a lot of punishment, not least because the fuselage is all made, you know, although it's got metal frame, it's covered in doped Irish linen, and if you get a bullet through it, you just whap another patch on. You know, it's super easy to repair. The numbers count, and what the RAF are able to do, and the Ministry of Aircraft 145%. And production out itself was dramatically. Aeronautica, Italian Air Force fighter planes like the Mk.I 202 and 109s from the Luftwaffe flying from southern Sicily to Malta could get there, cover the 60 miles or so in 15 minutes. And in that time, the Hurricane could not get to 25,000 feet, which is where it needed to be able to intercept the incoming raiders with the sun behind them and with the advantage of height and obviously the speed that came with it. So they were always at a colossal disadvantage. And what really should have happened is they should have been sending Spitfires out there in 1941, but Fighter Command had a change of boss in Sholto Douglas. An 11 group, which was the southeast of England, had a change of boss as well. Keith Park moving on. At the same time as Air Chief Marshal Dowding, one of the the victor commander of the Battle of Britain, was replaced by Air Vice Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory, as he was at that time. Brother of the more famous George Mallory, lost on Everest in 1924. And they just hogged them. They hogged the Spitfires. Had a terrible policy but there were many more Spitfires by that point. It was about 11,900 Spitfires built at the same time. That there were only about 9,800 Hurricanes built. There were plenty to go around. Plenty enough for Fighter Command and for overseas service in the Middle East and on Malta. But it took beginning of March 1942 before the first Spitfires came over, and at that point there wasn't enough. The irony, of course, is that Spitfires and decent ground controllers and a bit of radar and British fortunes on Malta swiftly changed.
Reducing the power and flying around, not at the top end of the power limit, just to keep some air flowing through and get it cooled down. So some of the Spitfires are notorious for overheating. There's certainly earlier variants that had one radiator, but yeah, the Hurricane, because he's been flying in formation on the wing, he's been using the power a lot, and it's been at a relatively high power setting. So he's just going to he's given it a few minutes to cool down, and now you can see him as Gabriel coming in to land on runway 21. So as the Hurricane comes into touchdown, if you look to your right-hand side, a very high-speed arrival of Paul Bonhomme in his...
First flew